What is going on, everybody? It's another conversation. It's Jason and Justin. Today we are joined by comic creator Rich Davis. How you doing today, Rich?
Man, I'm doing better than I deserve. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. I'm kind of jealous of that Spider-Man poster you have on your right side.
Get a little, yeah, I love that thing. It used to be on like one of those big shadow box frames, and then it fell off the wall. But it was too cool to get rid of, so I just took it out of the frame and hung it.
As I'm looking more and more at your background, I'm realizing there's a lot more cool stuff back there as well.
Thanks, man. I try. I think we all, of course, you got some nice stuff back there too. I think so. We all keep the, our little backdrops looking. Is that Mallrats?
It is.
I love that. Yeah. One of my all-time favorite Kevin Smith movies.
Yeah.
I'm doing a signing sometime this year at the Secret Stash, and I'm hoping that he's there and I get an opportunity to speak with him.
Oh, I hope so too.
Yeah, that'd be crazy fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we went there for their grand opening, and my friend kind of Kevin Smith fished. He went in dressed as the mayor from Jaws. So Kevin Smith noticed him from across the room, so we got to talk to him only because he came dressed like that. He got his attention. But he is such a nice guy in real life. Just as nice as you would imagine. But man, the Secret Stash is a cool place. Mm-hmm. There's some really good food joints around there too.
Yeah, it's like one of the meccas that every comic book fan really wants to go to. Well, every comic book fan of a certain age.
Yeah, the ones that watch Mallrats.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're a '90s kid, you want to go to the Secret Stash.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. At least once.
Exactly. It's like a pilgrimage. You have to do it.
So what got you into comic books?
Writing or reading.
I would imagine reading then got you into writing. I would assume one.
Yeah. The funny thing is, when I was a kid, I really didn't like comic books all that much because I didn't like to read. All I wanted to do was play baseball and play video games. So my mom, being ever ingenious as she was, she decided to trick me into learning to love to read by giving me comic books. So if I did well at school, or if I did well in my baseball game, they'd take me over to this place, and it was about 2 towns over, called Bob's Collector's Den, because there wasn't a comic shop in my hometown. And I'd go over there on Saturday, and I'd get to buy comic books. And of course, my little kid brain, I didn't realize that comic books were reading. So before I knew it, I just began this lifelong love affair, not only with reading comic books, but just reading in general.
That's awesome.
Yeah, some of the best written stories are comic books.
I totally agree with that. I'm a little biased, but
you said you like reading. You like reading in general. What's some other books you like outside of comic books?
I love anything by Anne Rice, even her claiming Sleeping Beauty books. I just love her style. Stephen King, that's an obvious choice. Kurt Vonnegut, Jules Verne, any of the Victorian horror or that Victorian era of science fiction. I really enjoy that. I was an actor, have a long career in theater. And so I love to read plays as well. Shakespeare, Hamlet, Richard III, Henry V, some Macbeth, some of my favorites. Looking to make sure nothing falls on me for saying that, because you're not supposed to say Macbeth in a theater. But yeah, so I read a lot. I still read a newspaper every day, every morning. I sit and I eat breakfast and I read the papers, and I just love to read. I don't think I could go a single day without reading. It'd be hell.
So, yeah, I love reading as well. Absolutely.
So I have to assume Dracula was something you read, because it seems like a lot of your comic book stems from that universe. And I have to say, Dracula, I don't get scared reading a lot of books, right? But Dracula, that boat scene where like he slowly starts picking off the people on the boat.
Oh,
like,
God.
Yeah. I think it was like teens when I read it. I was like, oh man, this is creepy. This is it.
Did you get a chance to see The Last Voyage of the Demeter a couple months ago?
Not yet. I heard it's good though.
It's good. It is a very interesting take on that one little chapter of Bram Stoker's Dracula. It makes a whole movie out of it, and it's actually really fantastic.
Well, then I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah, it's got some really nice. It builds to some nice horror, some good suspense. Got a couple of jump scares. So yeah, I highly recommend that one. I think it's probably the best Dracula film to come out in quite some while. So I really enjoyed that. And yes, Dracula has always been a fascination of mine. I still remember watching the Hammer films as a kid. They used to come on the station on Friday nights out of Nashville, Tennessee. There was kind of a ripoff Elvira on their local host, and she would always show the old Hammer films, and so I always loved the ones Christopher Lee. They just fascinated me, and as I got older, I kept finding myself going back to this book, reading it over and over again. It's just one of those things. Some people read The Lord of the Rings every year. I tend to read Dracula once or twice a year. It's just a fascinating book, and I always seem to find something new in it. So yeah, when I made this the transition to writing comic books, it made a lot of sense to me to build my universe around the Dracula figure. It's pretty ambitious and probably insane what I'm attempting to do here. But I'm trying to do what Universal attempted to do with those Victorian monsters and failed miserably. So I'll probably fail miserably too, because if Universal couldn't do it with all their billions of dollars, what am I going to do?
Are we talking Tom Cruise Mummy? Is that what we're talking about?
That was a movie we didn't need, didn't want, and wish I could forget.
The problem with that is they were already world building before they even tried to make like one established character, and that's you should always start with a base, a good foundation. Which
look at everybody wants to emulate what Marvel did with the MCU. But nobody wants to exercise the patience that Marvel had with the MCU. Justice League, they wanted to jump in DC. They wanted to jump right to the end and give us the big Justice League team. Well, no, we need Iron Man. We need Captain America. We need Hulk. We need all these characters to come together and tell us who they are. And then we care when they team up. But nobody cared about the Justice League outside of us, comic book nerds that know everything about them. I think you're absolutely right. They tried to kind of do that with the Tom Cruise Mummy movie. They tried to build a world when they didn't have any characters and any stories to tell in that world. So I hope I never fall into that pit.
They cast photos before they even had movies.
I know. It's like, wait, is this like the old Wizard magazines with the fan cast, which I love. I still wish they had those. I still remember the issue where they perfectly cast the X-Men movie. That was the first time I ever thought of Patrick Stewart as
he was so correct.
Yeah. He's perfect. He's absolutely perfect. And Ian McKellen was absolutely perfect as Magneto. I enjoyed Fassbender's take on it as well. But you can't compete with Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen. Where was I?
Either way, I liked where you're at. You were just talking about like universe building, but
I got kind of sidetracked on that talking about the X-Men. I tend to do that when it's time to talk X-Men.
So your first foray into like published work is Cult of Dracula for comic books. Is that correct?
Correct.
Really
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I worked as a playwright and a screenwriter for many years and transitioned into writing comic books back in 2018, 2019. That's when I started working on Cult of Dracula in earnest. And, it kind of actually started as a stage play that kind of began as a joke. And then it just stayed with me, and I kept wanting to go back and revise it. And so what I decided to do is take Dracula and kind of broaden our understanding of what that character is. Because the one thing I knew I didn't want to do was tell another story set in Victorian London about a creepy dude with a widow's peak and a tuxedo coming to buy up all the real estate. I didn't want to tell that story. There's nothing I could do with that story. It's been told so many times and so well. You don't need Rich Davis's version of Bram Stoker's Dracula. But you did need Cult of Dracula. So what I decided to do was, instead of looking at vampires strictly from a Western perspective, I decided to broaden the scope. And I started researching the vampire mythologies from different cultures and different time periods and different religions. And one of the things I discovered was that our Western culture is one of the very few that actually has male vampires. In most mythologies, vampires are women. It goes back to the myth of the succubi.
Sure.
So I decided, let's play with that. And so I started thinking to myself, what if Dracula was a title? It's not a name, it's a title. It's like king or queen, prince, princess, whatever. And it's handed down over generation through this bloodline. And all of the scary, evil women that we've written ghost stories and creepy children's songs about, from La Llorona to the Cherokee Deer Woman to Kali to Medusa. What if all of those figures were Dracula, just interpreted differently based on the people who observed her and their cultural backgrounds? And it opened up this whole new world of storytelling possibilities. So I took it all the way back to Lilith and the Garden of Eden. Lilith was the first Dracula in this universe. And I pull more of the Islamic myth of Lilith rather than the Judeo-Christian. Of course, it's a very similar mythology concerning that character anyway. But I thought the Islamic tale was exceptionally cruel. So I decided to roll with that. And so, from there, with Cult of Dracula, that led into Rise of Dracula, which was a big success. And then I stepped over to do Prometheus in Chains with Red 5 Comics, which is my book that's currently on shelves in comic book stores everywhere. It's a take on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So Rise of Dracula was sold exceptionally well. And so people wanted me to finish up the trilogy. I'd always seen this as a trilogy. And so now I have the opportunity with Thorny Comics and Blue Juice Comics to wrap it up with Reign of Dracula. So I like to tell people, if you look at Cult, and if Cult of Dracula was a Tobe Hooper, Southern Gothic, Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, Rise of Dracula is a John Carpenter, Escape from New York, near future dystopia, and Reign of Dracula is a full-on, insane George Miller, Mad Max, the world is fucked book.
I'm in.
Yeah, it's been fun to write. It really has been fun to write this story, because I just get to go as extreme. It's the end of the world,
Yeah.
It's literally the end of the world, and we're seeing all the gods and monsters and demons from all these different cultures and religions, and they're fighting Armageddon right in the middle of Washington D.C. and New York City and all over the world. So it's been a hell of a good time to write this. Honest.
So it leads to might be a fun question, and hopefully it's not too much of a spoiler question. What was your favorite maybe god or mythos to kind of shove in your comic book? And follow-up question, what was left on the cutting room floor that you might have been like, ooh, I kind of want you in there, but I can't. Or whatever.
Yeah, wow, that's a really good one. I really, the story, the myth of the Morrigan from Celtic mythology, which
like King Arthur Morgan.
Well, no, that's Morgan, Morgana Le Fay. The Morrigan is basically, she's the goddess of death. She's the goddess of war. She's all these different myths about her. She's a very, very powerful deity. Even has some Morpheus qualities, being able to invade people's dreams. So the Morrigan was probably my favorite goddess to explore more of. I really enjoyed also researching the Norse pantheon. I'm actually preparing a book set. It's heavy metal Vikings in space. So I've been researching. Right. So I've been reading a lot of Norse mythology, and the original Medusa story is so tragic. We get the story from the Odyssey about Medusa. Just she turns people to stone. But if you go deeper into the myth, she actually in our book was one of the Dracula. But she's a temple priestess. She's a Vestal virgin. She's done nothing wrong, and a god rapes her in the temple, and so she's then cursed and turned into the Gorgon. And it's just a very tragic story when you read it. So I really enjoyed her. I didn't get to go as in depth with some of the characters as I wanted. I didn't get to touch Baba Yaga as much as I wanted. I didn't really go into Kali as much as I wanted, and out of respect for Islamic readers out there, I did avoid exploring much of their mythology because it's offensive to them to depict Allah or Muhammad in a book like that. So I wish we could have done more with that. And so you ask what hit the cutting room floor that I wish I could have done more of. Is probably the Islamic mythology, because it's so fascinating when you're bringing in the myths of the jinn and their takes on angels and demons. It's just something that we're not. It's close enough to what we know, but it's not. It's just different enough to be very interesting.
Sure, totally makes a ton of sense. Did you see that? Oh, I'm gonna butcher the movie title, but like. There's a movie where a famous lady and a jinn, like they're going back through different stages of like Middle Eastern like mythologies. I thought it was a lot of fun. I forget the name of the movie though. It's pretty recent.
I saw something recently.
Here we go. 3,000 Years of Longing. I think you'd really dig it. I think you'd dig it.
I'll check that one out.
Yeah.
I recently the one I was thinking of I recently watched was Baskin. And that's a fantastic horror movie that deals with a jinn, and you get a lot of the mythology, but I will definitely check that one out because I really love that mythology. It's very interesting.
Yeah, me too. It's super cool.
So you said Prometheus and Chains deals with Frankenstein. Is there any possibility in the future you're going to meld these two worlds together?
Yep. That actually, so that is basically that's the flashpoint of Reign of Dracula, and we introduce it. We introduced the world unification in issue 6 of Prometheus and Chains. So it's I can't say a whole lot about how, but the idea is to build this shared horror universe with Dracula at the center of it. So we have in Prometheus and Chains, real quick, it's a take on Shelley's Frankenstein. It's set in the post-World War II atomic age, right here in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee, by the way.
Sure.
So it's set right here in Oak Ridge during the Manhattan Project. So Elizabeth and Victor Frankenstein were two of the Jewish scientists. This part's true. They fled Nazi Germany in 1939, came to the U.S., Operation Paperclip, and worked with the Allies to develop the atomic bomb. And while doing that, Elizabeth is exposed to high levels of radiation. She develops cancer, and her death sends Victor into this spiral of addiction, depression, and an obsession with bringing her back to life. So, as the story expands and grows into Reign of Dracula, we will see Victor and Elizabeth again. My next book after Reign of Dracula is a book called Dorian. It's a take on the picture of Dorian Gray. So I'm taking my favorite Victorian horror stories and trying to build this universe where this sandbox where I just get to play and tell the stories I want with my action figures.
So, forgive me, Prometheus and Chains, like the name Prometheus, the god that stole fire, gave to the humans. Are we stealing life and putting it back into?
Exactly, you got it. You nailed it. It's the of course, Shelley originally called Frankenstein or the modern Prometheus. So I wanted to play on that.
Sure. Yeah.
And Victor he's stealing life. He's stealing fire from the gods. What is life but energy? It's a Van Helsing line there. And the way we look at Victor in Prometheus and Chains is most times you see Victor Frankenstein, it's all about his arrogance that drives him. He wants to prove he can. So in this world, in my book, Prometheus and Chains, it's not his arrogance that drives him, it's his grief. It's post-traumatic stress disorder. Which is something that I suffer with myself. My wife passed away in 2020.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Prometheus in Chains, when you read it, that's me working through my shit, working through my PTSD. We do, in every issue of Prometheus in Chains, we put the phone number for the National PTSD hotline. That was very important to me. I'm very grateful that Red 5 allowed me to do that, because a lot of us, men especially, suffer with PTSD, and we don't talk about it because, we're not supposed to. Law enforcement, military, first responders, the people that need mental health help the most are the ones that are encouraged to get it the least. So what I'm hoping is that someone out there reading a book about a man struggling with PTSD, written by a man struggling with PTSD, maybe he reads it, he relates to it, and instead of picking up a gun, he picks up a phone. And so I'm hoping, if good can be accomplished, if a comic book can actually matter in the world, I'm hoping that's the way mine matters.
That's awesome. Putting good in the world, man. That's awesome.
That is awesome. Inspiring too.
Yeah, you got to do something, man. It's such an issue. I have a cousin in the Marine Corps, suffers from PTSD, and he's actually spoken to Congress about needing to expand mental health resources to our veterans, because you can't send these boys off, and girls, men and women, you can't send them off to do the things that we require them to do in war and not expect them to come back broken. And if we're going to bring them back broken, then we need to take care of them, and we need to do a better job of that. And sadly, it's something that we fail miserably at.
Yeah, totally agree.
Rich, thank you so much for sharing your story and coming on and talking to us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, this has been awesome. And before we got your name in an email, I had a lot of people recommended Cult of Dracula to me. So your book's word of mouth is out there, and it's super positive. So congratulations, because it's not easy to do what you're doing, and you seem to be creating this universe way better than Universal did. So Universal, reach out to this guy here.
Hey, you know what? Let me come in. We'll probably need to get Reign of Dracula out and maybe Dorian, and then Universal will be calling, come in and fix this clusterfuck.
That would be sweet. That would be really sweet.
I would love it.
Do you have a preferred method of folks getting your comic books? Is it Amazon? Is it just your local shop?
I highly encourage everyone out there listening, go to your local comic book shop, support your local comic book shop, even if you have to pay extra for it at your local comic book shop. Local comic book shops are the heart, the soul, and the backbone of the comic book industry. If they go away, everything you're going to read on the shelf is going to be a story created by these two giant corporations. They're all going to feature Bat Dude and Spider Guy, and that's it. But your local comic book shop, they curate the industry. They make sure to find things like Cult of Dracula or Prometheus in Chains. Tout my own 2 books there. But all of these other books out there, these independent genre books, they wouldn't exist without your local comic book shop. They wouldn't exist without that guy sitting there on, the Tuesday night before final order cutoff, going through and reading every description about every book, thinking, my customers would like this. So go support your local comic book shop if you can. Cult of Dracula is almost impossible to find in local comic book shops anymore. It's sold out everywhere. There is a movie coming. So a lot of people bought those up. But you can get the graphic novel trade paperback. They're out there. There's a hardcover edition as well you can pick up. It's anywhere Simon & Schuster books are sold. You can pick the collected editions up. But Rise of Dracula, Prometheus in Chains, and Reign of Dracula, when they're in shops, please go to your local comic book shop and pick them up. And if you don't have one, hit me up and I'll try to find you one in your area.
Awesome. Hey, Dunk, this might be too nitty gritty, but does your comic books also go through Diamond Comic Distributors?
Oh, yeah.
Is it all the same? Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're distributed. My first books were through Source Point Press. Red 5 Comics has Prometheus in Chains, and Blue Juice Thorny Comics will have Reign of Dracula. So yeah, my books they're solicited in previews. Some of my publishers deal with Lunar and Diamond.
Sure.
Penguin, Simon and Schuster. So yeah, anywhere,
Cool.
anywhere that carries those books, you can find what I've got.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rich. Everybody subscribe, like, comment. The links to everything will be down below. And yes, support your local comic book store. It's very important. Go buy your Supermans, buy your Spider-Mans. Also pick up something you've never heard of, because without the local comic book stores, even Image and a lot of those, as well known as they are, would be overshadowed by Marvel and DC if we didn't have our comic book stores. So definitely go out there and support.
And really good stories.
So much.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you.
Have a great